As we do this problem, I'm going to think out loud to kind of show you what my thought process is for solving physics problems. So a boy takes a road trip from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh, and the distance between the two cities is 300 kilometers. Well, I'm going to write that down. That sounds like a good thing to write down. D equals 300 km. Don't forget to label stuff. He travels first at 100 kilometers per hour at a speed of 35 meters per second, and then last 200 kilometers at 40 meters per second. What's his average speed? Well, let's see, we have two different distances then. So I'm going to call this distance total. I'll just put a little subscript t there so I know that this d is the 300. The first leg of the trip, I'll call it d1, is 100 kilometers. Okay, and then it says the second leg of the trip, well, first it says the speed was 35 meters per second, or the velocity. It's a velocity because we know what direction it is. 35 meters per second, and that's v1. Let's see, d2 was 200 kilometers, and v2 is 40 meters per second. And they want to know what the speed was, the average speed. So I'll just put it like that. That means the average velocity total equals question mark. And I'm going to leave that there so my instructor knows that's what I'm trying to solve for. That's what I'm trying to find. Well, I know in a case like this, if he had gone the same distance on both legs of the trip, then I could just take a simple average. In this case, since he went 1/3 of the trip at 35 and 2/3 of the trip at 40, I could do 1/3 of 35 and 2/3 of 40 and find the answer. But I'm going to use some physics here. Since this isn't an acceleration problem or anything like that, it's just an average speed problem, I'm going to go with velocity equals distance divided by time. And I can use that as long as there's no acceleration. So in the case of the first leg of the trip, if I solve that for t, I'll just say t1, that would equal d1 divided by v1. Okay, that'll give me a time. So d1 is 100. And v1 is 35 meters per second. Oh, now I see a problem. My top units are in kilometers and my bottom units are in meters. So I could go over here and make everything in meters, and I could say that's 100 times the k means 1,000. So I could say 100 times 1,000, or 1 times 10 to the 5th meters. So over here I can say 1 times 10 to the 5th meters divided by 35 meters per second. Look what's going to happen to the units there. The meters are going to divide out, and what I'm going to be left with is seconds over 1 over seconds in the bottom, which is the same thing as just seconds. So let's see, 100 times 1,000. Okay, and I get 2.85 times 10 to the 3rd. Seconds. Okay, now probably nobody would, say that many seconds. So if we divided that by 60, we would have, how many minutes that is. It'd be 47 minutes. They didn't ask us for that in the thing, but I'll just say approximately equal to 47 minutes. Okay, so then we've got T2 is equal to D2 divided by V2. Now again, we've got to check on those units. This time it's going to be 2 times 10 to the 5th meters, because originally they told us 200 kilometers, and that's going to be divided by 40 meters per second. So if I do that on the calculator, I get 5,000. So let's see, 5,000 seconds. Which is the same, if I divide that by 60, that's 83 minutes. Okay, now they asked for the total time. So, or the average velocity, I mean. The average velocity, the total average velocity would be the total distance divided by the total time. Well, I figured out time 1 and time 2, so I have that now. My total distance was the 300, so if I just write 300 kilometers, actually I should probably write it in meters, so that'll be 3 times 10 to the 5th meters divided by the 2 times T1 plus T2. That's going to equal, let's see, on the calculator, 2.85 times 10 to the 3rd plus 5,000 equals 7,850 seconds. So 3 times 10 to the 5th divided by 7,850 equals 38.2. meters per second. Okay, so now is that something that's reasonable? Well, let's see, we were doing the first leg of the trip at 35, and then the second leg at 40, so I would expect our average speed to be somewhere in between there. If you went half and half, it would be exactly between those two numbers, right? But since more of the journey was done at the 40 kilometers per hour, the number's probably going to be closer to 40, and it is. So that's how I would solve that problem.